Well, here we are in an eastern North Carolina tobacco field. Beautiful day, a little breezy today. It's early May, and the tobacco that's in this field, very young. It was just transplanted a little over a week ago. And we've got about 30 acres in this field. So every few years, tobacco rolls back around in rotation. Happens to be again this year. It's obviously been a few years since we've had tobacco in this plot. But I thought that I would show you guys a little bit of it and let you see it in its very early stages, and in future episodes we'll follow a plant and we'll watch it as it grows up and turns into an adult tobacco plant, a mature tobacco plant. So let's take a peek. The soil here in this part of eastern North Carolina is very sandy, and so not every variety of tobacco will grow in this type of soil. And most of the time in eastern North Carolina, when you see a tobacco patch or a tobacco field, it's going to be of the Brightleaf variety. And the Brightleaf variety is very popular in Virginia and North Carolina, a little bit of South Carolina, and even Tennessee and Kentucky. So this area of the eastern United States has great, generally speaking, has great soil conditions for the Brightleaf variety. These plants have been transplanted, which means that they are normally grown in a greenhouse nowadays. And there are several reasons for that. Number one, it's easier. And also, many of these plants are genetically modified in some way, if it's nothing more than for enhanced insect control and the Roundup gene and other things. After the plant gets up to a few inches, they are ready to be transplanted. And so they're brought out here with some workers and a transplanter that's on the back of a tractor, and they're set out. Tobacco is a very unique crop in eastern North Carolina in that it's one of the only larger crops or main crops that is transplanted. And the seeds were planted in a greenhouse. The plants were nurtured from the seedlings up to very, very small 2 or 3 inch plants, and then they're transplanted. Corn and soybeans and cotton and most of all the other common crops here in eastern North Carolina are planted as seeds directly in the field. So that's another major difference in tobacco versus the other major crops. Unlike many fields that are planted, especially here in eastern North Carolina, this particular field has rows that are grouped in groups of 4. And then there's a space, so there's like 4 rows and then a space and then 4 rows and a space. And that's traditional tobacco fields. Not all farmers do it. It depends on the equipment they have and the methods that they're using to tend to their tobacco. But one of the reasons for doing that is so that during spraying and crop maintenance, that you can have a tractor that'll go down this particular aisle, so to speak, in between the groups of 4 rows. It's called a fifth middle. That's the nickname for it. And so normally if you are seeing a field, a very young field such as this, and if you don't know what's in the field and you see that fifth middle, it's almost always a tobacco field. Now, again, you can have a tobacco field without a fifth middle. You can have all the rows equally spaced apart, but it all depends on the farmer again and their equipment. These plants were just transplanted just a little over a week ago, so they're not very old. They've spent the beginning days of their life in a greenhouse, And since they've been here, they have been sprayed twice by the farmer. And I'm not exactly sure what the spraying was for, but it was probably an insecticide to control the insects. These little tobacco plants are very vulnerable right now to insects, and you can see that some of the plants, let's see if we can find one. Some of the plants have already, here's one. So here's a plant where one of the leaves is almost entirely eaten by some sort of insect or animal. We can see here on this particular plant, you can see the end of the leaf damaged, most likely eaten by something. And sometimes if you look underneath the leaf, you can see the insect or whatever the varmint is, or the predator. Here's a leaf here. That's actually attached. It's below the soil level there. Also, these plants, if you look really carefully, they're very hairy. And we'll talk more about that as these plants grow and get a little larger in size. But looking pretty good. Looking pretty good for young tobacco plants. All right, well, there you have it for our first episode. 30 acres of brightleaf tobacco here in eastern North Carolina. And we're going to follow these plants as they grow and see how they mature, and hopefully this field will do well. We're entering hurricane season coming up really soon, and tobacco is very vulnerable to different types of damage here in eastern North Carolina. High winds from hurricanes, also drought conditions, or the opposite of that, too much rain. Lots of things can really negatively affect tobacco. So we're going to pay attention to that, and whatever happens, we're going to video log it here. We're going to vlog it. So stay tuned. We got more to come, folks.